Hi, this is Beersborn. Welcome back to AP Art History. We're talking about global traditions, specifically the Pacific Islands. And today we're going to take a look at this sculpture called a Nukuoro female deity. And this comes from the Nukuoro Atoll. Now let's start with the form. This is a carved wooden sculpture, about 1.5 feet tall, and this is just one example of this type of sculpture. There are a lot of Nukuoro female deity sculptures, and they have pretty consistent formal characteristics. Like, for example, let's start at the head. The head is really simplified into just kind of a round shape. We call this an ovoid shape, which is really just a fancy way of saying like an oval shape, but it's a three-dimensional oval shape. Kind of in the same way that you might have a sphere for a circle, but this is less perfectly round and more ovally. But this ovoid head doesn't have any real features. There's no shapes to hint at a nose or a mouth or eyes. It's just kind of a flat form. Now moving down to the body is stylized into these really angular shapes. There's hard lines for the shoulders and the torso and the waist. And we also see a hard line that cuts across the chest here that gives the impression of breasts. The whole figure is really stylized into this very kind of angular, very abstract shape. Now, these sculptures were originally carved with tools that the culture had access to, like, for example, a sharpened clamshell. They would take a shell, sharpen the edge, and use it as a tool to carve wood. Now, later, when they had contact with European traders, they started to use metal tools, but originally, the sharpened clamshell was the tool that they used. What really makes the material of these sculptures distinctive, though, is how smooth and glossy the wood is. The way that the artist would do this is by rubbing the wood with a piece of pumice. Pumice is a volcanic stone with a really porous, rough surface. And by rubbing it on the surface of the wood, it kind of acts like sandpaper, making the wood really shiny and smooth. Now let's talk about the content. This sculpture is a depiction of a deity, and a deity is a god. This god takes the form of a human figure, and there's definitely emphasis on the chest with the abstracted suggestion of breasts, and then really notably, if you take a look at the butt of the figure, the butt really dramatically emerges from the surface of the figure. And it has this really distinctive kind of flat shape. And this is a common feature across all the Nukuoro female deities. On the front of the sculpture, there are these lines incised into the wood to really emphasize the pelvic region. And all of these features are meant to communicate that this figure is a depiction of a woman. It's a female deity. Now, these deities were local gods that were specific to just small groups of people on the Nukuoro Atoll. Sometimes even just families would have their own specific female deity. So let's talk a little bit more about that with the context. These sculptures are used by people on the Nukuoro Atoll. An atoll is an island that takes the form of a ring with the ocean on the outside, but then we have a big body of water on the inside as well. And on the thin strip of land in this ring, the people of the Nukuoro Atoll would farm bananas and sugar cane and coconuts. And every year at harvest, they would have a big celebration. And deity sculptures like this one would be honored by being given offerings of the food from the harvest. They dress the sculptures up with feathers and flowers and paint. One of the reasons why it's otherwise so undecorated is because during these celebrations, they would decorate the sculptures. Dances would be performed, music would be played, and these ceremonies could last for days. Now, the function of these ceremonies is to honor the sculpture, because during the harvest, these sculptures become the embodiment of these local gods. It's more than just a sculpture, it is the deity itself. And specifically, these gods have power over fertility. The focus on fertility is why there's so much emphasis on the female attributes of this sculpture. By honoring it, the group guarantees continued fertility of the people and the land of the atoll. So their population would continue to flourish, and their food would continue to flourish as well. Now, eventually in the 1800s, Christian missionaries arrive on the atoll and start converting the local population to Christianity. And within about 100 years, the practice of using the Nukuoro female deity sculptures had pretty much vanished, and they were replaced by Christian traditions instead. Many of these objects were traded off to European groups, and now they're currently found in European museums. We'll leave it there for today. Thanks for joining, and I'll see you next time.